Welcome to another episode on the Procurement Pulse, where we try to demystify this monster called public sector procurement. Today, we have a very interesting guest from the Integrity Commission, where we're going to look at some of the nuances that exist with the Integrity Commission and really how it can benefit the average supplier. Today, my guest is none other than the Director of Investigations himself, Mr. Kevin Stevenson. He's a member of the Integrity Commission's team. And of course, Kevin is an attorney at law also. He's a justice of the peace. Now, Kevin, welcome to the Procurement Pulse.
Thank you very much, Dwayne. Very happy to be here.
Appreciate, man. So, Kevin, the Integrity Commission. Now, every supplier, when they hear about the Integrity Commission, supplier practitioner, the most we know about the Integrity Commission is that we see you guys doing a lot of audit on the government people every day. But tell us, give us a quick snapshot of what your role is at the Integrity Commission and really how it impacts on the supply market.
Yeah. Well, to start broadly in terms of the role of the Integrity Commission is really an entity that is set up to ensure that there is integrity in public life, to keep our public officials honest. My role as Director of Investigation is really to monitor and investigate government contracts, the award, implementation, termination of government contract, and as well as prescribed licenses, as well as to investigate any act of corruption that is reported to the Integrity Commission. The Integrity Commission also has a prosecutorial arm, which is headed by the Director of Corruption Prosecution. The Commission of itself is really a very unique creature. There is no other Integrity Commission across the region or anywhere like the Integrity Commission where there is the power of investigation, prosecution, in-house. So it's a very unique animal, and so because it is new within this space and it's probably not as well understood as it should be, you find that a lot of persons may be somewhat fearful of what it is because, of course, with the absence of information, people will be fearful. But the Commission sees itself as a partner in the fight against corruption within the jurisdiction, and it is in the process of establishing itself as that partner. So it's not something to be feared, but it's an organization to ensure that you cooperate with it so that it can fulfill its mandate of ensuring that there is integrity in public life.
So you said there's none. I mean, what jumped out at me a while ago is that you said this is the only one that exists across the whole region. There's one or two reasons for that. Is it that Jamaica is so corrupt that we are the only place that needed to put something like this in place?
No, just to clarify, not that there are no other integrity commissions across the region, but the setup of the Jamaican Integrity Commission is quite unique.
Oh, okay.
So for example, there's an integrity commission in Guyana. They do not look at government contracts in the way that we monitor and investigate government contracts. They are more concerned with statutory declarations. But at our Integrity Commission, I suppose because of how it came about in terms of the amalgamation of the Office of the Contractor General that dealt with the monitoring of government contracts, the Commission for the Prevention of Corruption that dealt with statutory declarations, and then there was the Parliamentary Integrity Commission that dealt with declarations for parliamentarians. All those entities came together to form the Integrity Commission. And as an added component, we had the prosecutorial arm that came on board to ensure that there is a sort of one-stop shop to deal with acts of corruption in Jamaica.
Okay. So, to help our viewers a little more, right? The Integrity Commission, is it just about public sector people? How does the Integrity Commission really impact on, like, a supplier? The average supplier, you're just coming into the space as a supplier. How does the Integrity Commission impact on them as companies or as an individual, a sole trader?
The link that has to be made is one of the functions of the Integrity Commission, which is really to monitor and investigate government contracts. And that is where your suppliers will come in. Now, the Commission up and down the country monitors government contracts, whether they are construction-related contracts, goods, services, consultancies. Those contracts are monitored by the Integrity Commission I believe that in the last quarter, there are over 30,000 contracts of a value of $500,000 and above. That's those are the kinds of contracts that the Integrity Commission monitors on a routine basis.
Sorry, say that again.
Over 30,000.
Over 30,000 contracts.
Of a value of $500,000.
Value over $500,000. Imagine that. And the other day we had Andre on here, and Andre told us that there was $3 billion to be spent on government contract. And you're saying over 30,000 individual contracts.
In a quarter.
Wow. In a quarter.
Yes.
And that is what, 3 months?
3 months.
Wow.
Absolutely. The important thing to know, Dwayne, is that government uses procurement to show that it cares. That is how it implements its programs. I can think of no government program or policy that could be implemented without some form of procurement, whether you're going to have office supplies, whether you need a consultancy to deal with a particular policy issue. There has to be some form of procurement. And so it's important that suppliers are aware of their important role in this process, because the government doesn't produce goods and services necessarily itself. So it is dependent on suppliers, particularly local suppliers, to provide those goods and services. So that is how a supplier may come into contact with the Integrity Commission in the Commission's monitoring of government contracts. And how do we monitor government contracts? It varies. What we have in-house is that we have 2 subunits that deal with, one deals with construction contracts, and the other deals with non-construction contracts. So for example, if there is a road being built, a school, those are construction contracts.
Okay.
If you have security services that need to be procured, for example, security guards for a particular facility, and those are, that would be considered to be a non-construction contract. The Commission will look at the bids. Once there's an advertisement in the newspaper, or however it's advertised, the Commission looks at it, and depending on what the nature of the procurement is, we would request the bidding documents. We would also attend a lot of the tender opening ceremonies to see that the process is going on as it should.
How do you do that now? The chief procurement officer said the other day that, you know, we are doing a lot of electronic procurement now. So how do you now do that opening monitoring when it's now electronically?
So the Integrity Commission is a very dynamic organization. The fact of the matter is that we generally don't make the rules ourselves. So as soon as those rules change, our processes will change to ensure that we are having an impact. So when the procurement exercise is moved online, we then had to modify our processes to ensure that our officers have access to all the material online to be able to monitor and, if necessary, investigate. So if we speak about GoJEP, for example, that's a platform that the Integrity Commission invariably monitors every day in order to see what procurement exercises are happening, to download bidding documents, and if there are virtual tender opening exercises. That exercise came about or became more popular during the COVID-19 pandemic, because people were meeting face to face, and so we had to monitor the way that we do procurement. And at the same time, the Commission had to modify the way it did monitoring and investigation.
If I have found that, you know, an entity or an officer did a very good job in their work and I am a supplier, is it okay for me to give that officer a little tip at the end of when that contract is awarded? Is that something that the Integrity Commission would frown upon?
Well, there are policies that deal with accepting gifts. I can think of, for example, the staff orders. And I won't go into the staff orders now, because that's really another conversation. But the staff orders deal with accepting gifts, and if the gift is accepted, how the gift ought to be treated by an officer. Now, the Integrity Commission is not necessarily interested in, on a day-to-day basis, in the in that kind of relationship between a supplier and a public officer, except when there is a complaint or there is an observation of some conduct that could cause the procurement process to be tainted. So, for example, accepting a bribe, conflict of interest, those kinds of activities are activities that we would be interested in from our perspective. But what I would say is, if an officer is ever in doubt as to the appropriate way to treat with a gift, for example, from a supplier, I would say that they need to consult the relevant policies, for example, the staff orders and the procurement regulations, etc. But I would, out of caution, I would discourage any public officer from accepting a gift from a contractor or a supplier as a result of any work that they've done with that supplier or contractor, because invariably it's going to be seen as a conflict of interest.
So, we in the supply world, you buck up on a number of nuances, and I've heard many stories. Some stories I've heard where government officials will say to a supplier, whatever it is that you do, make sure that you put on a little thing for me. Would that classify under unethical and corrupt practices that you would be interested in the Integrity Commission?
Well, what you're describing to me, Dwayne, sounds like providing some form of benefit as a result of the public officer conducting his or her duties in relation to a contract. And that is something that is unlawful. If we think about it at the broadest level, it would be unethical. But when it becomes serious, you are looking at an act of corruption. And really and truly what that is when a public officer uses their office to get a benefit either for themselves, an illicit benefit for themselves, or for another party. So we would not encourage that kind of behavior. In fact, officers should be very careful in terms of their interactions with a supplier, especially when it comes to accepting any benefit at all from a process that they had to preside over.
So from a supplier's perspective, if I, as a supplier, go and participate in this unethical practice, how can that affect me as a supplier and my future participation in public sector procurement?
Well, at the basic level, if it is that a supplier is found to be in breach of the legislation, the Corruption Prevention Act, then that person would be charged for with an act of corruption. And I am sure with a conviction, that is something that the PPC would consider in its registration of a contractor. Now, in this jurisdiction, at the moment, we do not have debarment of contractors like what they have in Guyana, for example. But I'm sure that that is something that has been discussed for some time, and I'm sure that in short order, the policymakers will consider seriously whether this is something that would assist in terms of ensuring that procurement exercises go on in a transparent manner, and that the process is not in any way tainted.
So if I suspect as a supplier, for example, a government practitioner is giving unfair competitive advantage to another bidder or another contractor because there is a relationship and it is biasing the process, is there an avenue for us to report that to the Integrity Commission?
Certainly. One of the divisions of the Integrity Commission is the Information and Complaints Division. And that division receives complaints from any member of the public about any matter that falls within the remit of the Commission. So what you have just described, a complaint about irregularity in terms of the interactions between a supplier and a public officer, is something that could be reported to the Integrity Commission, because on the face of it, If it is in fact true, then you are looking at a breach of the Procurement Act. You could be looking at a breach of the Corruption Prevention Act and other associated legislation. So it's definitely something that any person who comes in contact with that kind of information should make a report to the Integrity Commission so that the matter can be treated with. You can also make a complaint to the public body itself, or you could make a complaint to the Public Procurement Commission, because there is indeed a review or an appeal mechanism that a supplier could utilize if they think that they have been treated unfairly by the public entity.
So, if I'm a director of a company though, and one of my staff was the one who participated in this corrupt act, how does that impact me as a director?
Well, certainly, a staff member who is an agent can cause a company to be negatively impacted. The director of that company would have to establish that the person was not acting as an agent. They were on a frolic of their own in whatever conduct that they participated in. And so I would say that it would be in the best interest of any director of any company to ensure that its agents or employees are acting within the ambits of the law, because that could, of course, cause reputational damage for that company. And I'm sure that this is something that the PPC would be interested in when such an entity should turn up to be registered as a contractor.
All right. So, as a supplier, what are some of the steps I can take to combat corruption and unethical practices?
Well, the first step that any supplier can take is to ensure that they do not themselves participate in any unethical practices.
So don't ask for the bid, don't ask for the budget.
No, you in your own entity must ensure that you are acting above board. The other thing that you can do is to ensure that you implement practices, policies within your own organization to combat these irregular practices, and to utilize the necessary reporting mechanisms when you identify irregular conduct. So for example, I just spoke about complaints that can be made to the Integrity Commission, complaints to the Public Procurement Commission, and any other law enforcement entity. Once there is suspicion that a crime has been committed, then you make the necessary report to the appropriate entity. And of course, you would want to ensure that you have disciplinary procedures internally to be able to deal with some of these irregular conducts.
Okay. Is there any training that is available centered around these things for suppliers?
I cannot speak authoritatively on whether there is.
No, and I mean from the Integrity Commission.
Yes, we do have an anti-corruption and good governance training, a number of modules, and these modules are administered by the Corruption Prevention Division of the Commission. I didn't mention before that the Commission has investigation division, 4 statutory divisions: the investigation division, the information and complaints division, the corruption prosecution division, and the corruption prevention division. The latter is responsible for stakeholder engagement, training in anti-corruption, and of course the monitoring of the national anti-corruption strategy. Now that division has developed a number of courses that suppliers can take, but these are mainly tailored for public bodies. However, I had a discussion with the director of that division just before coming here today, and he has indicated to me that the modules have been extended to at least 2 private sector entities so far, and it is his intention to expand it to include suppliers and other private sector entities. So they can definitely reach out to the Integrity Commission to get some of that training especially for larger companies with a lot of staff, to get some of that training. Because what you find, Dwayne, is that we speak about corruption and unethical practices a lot of times, but there are not many persons who are necessarily informed about all the different variation of conduct that should be avoided. For example, going to the tax office and giving the security guard $500 or whatever the amount is to cause you to cut the line. That is corruption, but the ordinary person doesn't necessarily see it that way. So I think that the awareness need to be brought to every single person from the highest level to the man on the street, so that everybody understand that these things are not right, and that this is what you can do to eradicate or to do something about improper conduct. I think with that, if it's taken seriously and there is an all of society approach, then of course we can have some cultural change, and Jamaica would be a better place as a result.
Excellent.
Yes.
In your experience, what can you say has been, like, if you can cite an example or two, instances where a supplier would have acted unethically that would have been probably innocent, well, maybe not fully innocent, but unassuming based on our culture, etc., that was totally avoidable, but as you said, probably lack of information would have created that issue?
You know, Dwayne, I would say that over the years at the Integrity Commission, the most regularly occurring complaint is conflict of interest. And you can see why. Jamaica is a very small society. And so almost everybody knows somebody.
Or you know somebody who knows somebody.
Exactly. But we are not aware of how we should treat correctly with conflicts of interest, because a conflict of interest is not in and of itself bad, you know. It is the way in which you handle the conflict of interest. And most entities, public and private sectors, they have a conflict of interest policy. And what you find most times when there are breaches is that people are not aware of the correct procedure for example, disclosing the conflict and what ought to take place after that. And so they may think that, you know, by saying it to maybe another director or a colleague, it is sufficient, or people already know that I know this person, so it shouldn't be a problem. There is more than likely a correct way of documenting and reporting a conflict of interest. And so what you find when this does not happen, and you call it innocent, it may very well have been innocent, but because it was not handled properly, what would otherwise be a proper process is now tainted as a result of a misstep, whether inadvertently or, you know, willfully done. So I think conflict of interest is something, is a topic that we need to really engage around, because it affects almost everything in public life. And, you know, it's an area that we have to really bring some clarity to.
So this thing that, so if I know you and you're an attorney at law, and I need you to do some attorney work for my entity, and I say, you know, Kevin, I can come and do some work for me. If I don't disclose it, that's a conflict. That I know you personally. If I don't disclose it, it's a conflict. But if I tell everybody, say, I know you, would that be sufficient?
Well, telling everybody that you know me is not in and of itself a cure. There may be a policy in place that says that once there's a conflict, it should be documented and it should be handed over to this person or that person. And then there may be a further process as to what should be done when that disclosure is made. So if you haven't followed the process, notwithstanding the fact that others know that you may know me, it doesn't cure it at all. So you have to follow the correct procedure.
So there must be a procedure in-house.
Absolutely.
And you said the Integrity Commission monitors all government contracts over a certain value. But for a supplier, how is that beneficial to us as suppliers to when we're looking at doing business with the government, what makes that a transparent way for a country to operate?
The important thing, doing is that what the Integrity Commission is doing is that it is monitoring to ensure that the procurement process goes on in line with what the established policies and laws are. So it would be in a supplier's best interest to know that when they submit a bid, for example, all the persons submitting a bid, similarly situated, are treated in the same way so that they all have an equal opportunity to win the bid. And that is the kind of service that the Integrity Commission provides. When we, for example, are monitoring and we get to reviewing the stage where we are reviewing the tender documents, we look at the documents and we are saying, for example, that some of the scoring, the manner in which a person is scored in different categories, it's not clear for everybody who is submitting a bid to be able to understand that this is how I will be scored. That is not clear, and so the entity should make the necessary corrections to ensure that all the bidders are put in the same position to be able to submit a successful bid. So at that stage, we catch it, we write to the public body, and most of the times, they will make the necessary changes, they will advise the bidders, and they're all in the best position to be able to submit a successful bid.
Does the public bodies have to comply with what the Integrity Commission says?
No, they don't have to. So we warn, we caution, we advise. The public bodies may or may not accept what we suggest. However, if it is that it is found that there is a breach of law or policy, we conduct an investigation, and that report goes to Parliament. And if at the end of the investigation there is an offence committed, then certainly the Director of Corruption Prosecution will more than likely prosecute the person for the offence committed, once there is the evidence to support that there is an offence committed.
All right. What is one piece of information, guidance you would give to a new supplier that is coming into the space of doing business with the government?
You have to know what you're getting into. Understand how procurement works. What is it that you need to do to be able to be successful in the sector? So you need to know what you need to do to get registered. You need to know what the requirements are in terms of submitting bidding documents. You need to understand the bidding documents. You need to have a working knowledge of these documents. You need to know all the correct information to fill into those documents to ensure that you have a competitive bid. You asked a question before, and I don't want to necessarily go back off topic, but one of the important things that the Integrity Commission assists with in terms of suppliers is that it ensures that there are a lot of competitors in the process. If the process is tainted, it means that only a few will benefit, and more than likely it would be the few who are willing to participate in these nefarious activities. And what you then do is that you filter out all the other suppliers, and invariably nobody benefits because your business will not grow. You are not able to benefit from the figure that you suggested earlier, the $3 billion US dollars. That's a lot of money.
Indeed.
Jamaica being a small country, you're looking at about maybe 25% of GDP.
Yeah.
Why should you be squeezed out of an opportunity to grow your business and to be successful because the process is tainted and it's skewed to the benefit of the few and not for all to benefit? So that's one of the important functions that the Commission provides for the society at large.
All right. Kevin, it has been a beautiful conversation, very enlightening. I think the most important thing that we got from this, at least especially for me, is that the Integrity Commission is not a gotcha, but it is here to foster transparency, ensure that there's ethical practices, and make sure that we hold different people accountable. So you see that $3 billion that is there in Jamaica to spend, that the pool is fair and wide. So if you have a problem, how do people report that there is an issue? What are some of the ways that they can contact the Integrity Commission?
So they can call our offices. They can send us an email. You can go online and actually make a complaint on the Integrity Commission website. You can walk into office and lodge a complaint. I really and truly don't have the numbers on me at this point
Well,
in time.
we'll put the numbers up on the screen,
yes,
and put the link on the screen also, so the viewers can actually get it. And for the person who are just listening, we'll just drop it in the show notes, so you can go and visit the Integrity Commission in your own time. Okay, Kevin, thank you very much for your time, and we look forward to all the work that will come out of the Integrity Commission, and just continue to keep holding persons accountable, so the pie is shared equitably across the spectrum.
You're welcome, Dwayne, and thank you very much for having me, and good work with this procurement, the public procurement pulse, that program that you've now designed. I think it will do some good, and I look forward to seeing all that will come from it.
I appreciate it.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much.